live in Bali now, which is interesting, which has nearly been 12 months. And the interesting thing was it wasn't a well thought out plan as well. So I think, you know, my wife and I, to be honest, we made a decision and just said, and we're going to work it out. So we actually landed in Bali without a house or anything at that stage. And there's some reasons kind of leading up to that. But I guess the part of that, and we can unpick a lot of it and some insights into it, is that it was also, like, Lincoln's my business partner in this. It's kind of also looking at creating a model that is still able to be functioning as a business as well, you know, and there's some really honest discussions and radical openness. But I think as part of that, there's a lot of things that have happened now. So we've got team members in Tassie here, and Sue, Marcus, who is here today as well. You know, in Victoria, we've got team members, and now we've got team members in Bali. We've got someone from Germany, you know, who's there as well. So you've got this kind of eclectic kind of group of people that we would have never even have had this talent together if we hadn't, you know, hadn't looked at that. And I mean, I guess myself, in the last month, I've been in 5 different spots. And I was in New Zealand, out through Asia, Melbourne, Brisbane, Tasmania, and still the business is functioning in that sense. So there's a lot of things that have to get right to get that, and I can't say we've got it absolutely 100% either.
I think there's a couple of ways, and I want Lincoln to have a chat here, because I think there's a couple of ways it can look almost as a digital nomad, because the way I'm doing it is actually quite different to the way you're doing it. You're actually part of an integral part of a business that has employees and a plan, and from what you've done in the past will probably be quite successful, whereas I'm a freelancer who is really, even though I have projects where I work with other people, I have a business with Ginger, we run media training, which actually we launched while I was in Vietnam last year. I don't know if that was a smart idea or not, it's sort of how it happened. But I also have my own projects, so I'm almost kind of a sole entity. So they're probably different complexities, I think, about how you make the digital nomad world work. Because for you, when we met, Lincoln, you were saying you're kind of the base that makes it sort of all stable from a nice stable base in Melbourne, whereas when I move, there's no one back in Canberra. So let's talk a bit about, because we want to make sure that this is really helpful for anyone who's thinking of doing this. So I wanted to cover a couple of things. I want to talk about who can make being a digital nomad work, and how the kind of qualities you need to do that. And then I want to get into some just really practical tips. So I was thinking about this, and actually for me, the qualities of making life as a digital nomad work, even if it is only temporary for a couple of months and you do just want to go somewhere warmer for winter and work from there and not have to put all your work aside while you're away. It's actually the same as almost for any freelancer. I think you need to be self-directed. I think you need to be motivated. I think you need to be good at networking in a different way than you are at home. You've got to be faster at it, because you need to find the people who can help you somewhere that you've never been. Where do I print this thing in Chiang Mai? Or I'm having this whole tech problem and I need to actually get someone here looking at my laptop to fix it. Who can do that? So you need to be able to network in a really efficient way. I think you need to be able to maximise your time as a digital nomad. It depends a bit. So for me, when I'm doing that, I'm also trying to get some, possibly I'm also doing travel writing stories as well, but I'm trying to get some sort of holiday experience out of the time as well, or some kind of just different cultural experience. So I tend to go into a period being away with a very clear idea of this is half work and half downtime. And so I will figure out what that's going to look like in advance. I really carefully choose where I'm going to go. I need somewhere that's going to give me a space to have a reasonably comfortable virtual office if it's more than a couple of hours here and there. I don't waste time. So for me, same with travelling domestically, if I'm away for 6 or 8 weeks working in one place. Planes and bus trips, they're kind of work time for me. They're not really kind of sit and just watch the movies. That's a moving office, because that means that there's more time that I can go and do something really fun at my destination. Or I might get up early and go, I love working from cafes, so if there's a co-working space or a cafe that's a virtual co-working space, which you do find a lot overseas. So there were some really good ones that were really easy to find in Hoi An. I could tell, like I would walk in, I was like, oh, I reckon that's going to be a good spot. And I walk in, I'm like, you're a digital nomad, you're a digital nomad. I could see people having meetings. I'm like, you live here and you're both working on separate projects. Journos are good at eavesdropping too, hey, so there was a bit of that. But you could just see people were doing a similar thing. And so there's a nice sense of community without me actually having to do much other than drop in and buy a coffee and buy breakfast. And then, maybe then at lunch I'd wrap and I'd go and I took a nanny. That's how my 3-year-old was looked after while I was working. So there is the family challenge. But then the afternoons I would have kind of downtime. So I was still getting all my work done, like as far as I'm concerned. But I had a quite clear plan about how that looked. So that is just like normal freelancing. But I think there are some differences. And for me, there's no nice stand-up desk or ergonomic chair when you're a digital nomad, unless you're setting yourself up a little bit more permanently than a couple of months. You do need to be able to adapt really quickly, and freelancers are good at that. We're great at that, but you need to put that on high speed when you're working overseas or working away. And you need to be, I want to get your tips on this, you need to be good at finding ways to work offline, because so much of being successful as a digital nomad requires your work to be done online. But let's face it, there's plenty of places in Australia too where the internet just doesn't cooperate for the 2 hours that you've set aside to do that particular task. So I think a smart freelancer, but a smart digital nomad will get really good at going, okay, I've got this task that I can do when I'm online, but I've also, if things go wrong, I'm going to plough away at this. And journalism's good because we've got drafts in various forms, for example, but you couldn't maybe do your research that you need the internet for. Yep. So every field will have something like that where you're not reliant on the tech to get through some tasks. And I think you're really smart as a digital nomad to do that. And then lastly, I reckon you need to not whinge because things sometimes aren't super easy. Like it sounds quite glamorous, it's not always glamorous. What are your top tips for making a digital nomad lifestyle work? Or
I think we chatted about it last night actually at dinner, but I think, what you're chasing a lot of this is freedom. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of the time in life we're kind of trying to find freedom of choice, but to get freedom you need discipline. And that's the kind of the yin and the yang of all of this. So to have freedom, the discipline of your day is paramount. To be fair, to be honest, and so it comes back to being super organised and focusing on what's the essential few rather than the important many of your day. And really kind of getting project kind of driven and output driven, and so I think what I have found from my experience is two things: is that the absolute luxury is that not being in the office all the time, you get so creative. So it's not feeling guilty. So in the mornings, I will do my yoga and do the things that I want to be able to do, but it creates the space for me to actually have those moments of reflection to be creative, because I think sometimes we have this kind of mental constipation because you're in the office all the time trying to produce an idea and you're not creating this space around you to be able to do that. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is around we're still kind of evolved chimpanzees. We still need to be in the tree with our fellow kind of chimpanzees. Like, you still need interaction and stuff. So the most amazing thing is when I hate working at home by myself. That's just me, because I just feel, so that's why you see so many people working in cafes. No one's talking, but you just want this kind of human, we just want to be in the tree, and with the other monkeys, and it's kind of, I know it sounds really, but it's that as well. So I think it's finding out how you work best, and it's not what's right or wrong around that. And the third part of it is that you still need, and I think what we're discovering is culture, like aligning values with people that you're working with, having stand-up meetings, being able to still come together. So next week, 6 people in our team will be in Bali, and that is for a week, right, of just kind of intense to get a project done. And those interactions we then draw upon. It's almost like social equity for another 3 months, because we're together to get it done, and then everyone goes off and then gets it done. So again, it's that coordination bit, is how do you actually come together at the right times, not being together all the time, but what are those dynamic interactions that we can have with it. And then the last one is that, it's a journey. So my wife, we've been together for 25 years now. Like, it's kind of, we're kind of, it's a partnership as well. So, how do we actually, what's the trade-offs? Like, how do we negotiate these trade-offs? Like, everything is a trade-off, like, and not everything is rosy all the time. Like, shit happens, and there is stuff that is not working, and there is stresses, and you are in the fetal position on the couch sometimes saying, how is this going to work? Like, it's like, I don't want to be painting any picture up here of absolute rosiness. No. Everyone's got some stuff going on, And
it follows you even to Bali and to Costa Rica, and it's really frustrating.
So it's not running away from stuff. It's like, it's kind of addressing that. So I think just with your wife, and I'll attach it, is that, like, it is a partnership. So you've got all these different ingredients, trade-offs, with your kids, family, business partners, clients, and all these types of things, and it's juggling, and things are out of balance sometimes. And so that the life struggle, I think, of all of this is just trying to recalibrating constantly around this.
Yeah, before,
just for context.
Yes.
What sort of business you run?
Yeah, so we've got several things. So we've got an education business. So we've got one school which is now online in 30 countries around the world. We've got a platform that we're working with one of the state governments for streamlining international student recruitment, creating transparency and honesty and trust through that.
For universities?
For universities.
Yep.
And then things, I'm in projects now, like just personally, I've got esports teams. I'm actually building a freelance kind of facility in Bali at the moment as well. And a lot of philanthropic things. So it's kind of like it's juggling all those different things at the same time.
I know we're all about to go and sign up to Freelance Collective. I am after your talk, Nina. So let's come back to thinking about working remotely as a digital nomad. I want to open it up to questions, but I did just want to leave you with a couple of things to think about before we do that, is that actually companies are seeing this as a trend, and it is being supported structurally. Anyone who reads The Good Weekend might have read a story in the Sydney Morning Herald of the Age, might have read a story recently about Rome, which is how would you describe Rome? A home sort of for digital nomads, but it's almost franchised. It's the same in Miami as it is in Tokyo and etc. So they actually realised that, and it had a lot of investment money going into that. So this is not something that's just been bootstrapped. This has been highly financed to tap into a trend in the freelance community, that people are working globally, working very successfully at whatever their creative thing is, for big companies, for tech startups, for whoever. So you can actually now as a digital nomad, you can tap into a community of other people, and in fact it's almost, I think, going to be like the banana pancake trail that goes through Thailand, that it's almost hard to get off. In a way, I could see that, you know, when you're working remotely, there's so many other people that are doing the same thing. It's not even new and exciting, and you're not actually different doing this now. It's a big trend, especially in the hot spots of the digital nomad communities. So the Ubers and
that is the biggest opportunity for Tasmania.
Yeah.
It is, and we were chatting about it again last night. Is that, you know, this has got to be on the path that the freelancers come to, you know, and it's just about how do you create an environment, and people define themselves by the places that they go. So you look at the top creative places around the world that people go to, like it's planned. Like you look at, say, the US, right? And you can actually, there's studies around. You look at Austin, Texas. You look at Portland. You look at what Denver's doing there now as well. You look at, say, a Brooklyn. You look at it's creating space and creating and enabling this digital nomad. And I think look at us here. I mean, seriously. I mean, you got the best hiking, the best food. You've got, you know, an amazing environment. Like, people want to come here. So I think that is such an enormous opportunity. And there's the last thing is then, even with schools, like how do we actually create schooling maybe to attract digital nomads? At Green School, there is a co-working space.
Yeah.
So we go to school, it is phenomenal. And you've got, like, there's 400 kids, 800 parents. And afterwards, there's 3 cafes, right? People are sitting there, so it's not rather we're dropping people off in the 4-wheel drive and scooting off, like, you know, like all the president's men. You know, it's kind of, it's like people are there taking time, collaborating, and having these chats around, these rich chats around these things, and it's enabling it. So 2 of our team, so just the last thing, so we've just hired the e-commerce vice president of Adidas, right, for Europe, in our team, who was a parent, right? And he then just resigned. He's like, I'm looking for something to do. I mean, I could never afford this guy. You know what I mean? And never in our life. We found our senior dev, who is highly experienced there. We've got looking at some great content people now. This lady ran an agency in Spain, who was a top 8, and you're just going, like,
But people want to trade off for the...
People want to trade off. So how do we create space for people for this to actually happen? What an opportunity here. Imagine the first school here in Tassie to say we're actually creating something here to help attract this or we've got a free space that we've got down on Cemetery. There is more space in Lonnie, let's be honest. Every second floor is vacant, right? Like, why aren't we just giving that space away for creative areas? Like, you look at, say, something like Berlin, for example, right? When the wall went down, the reason for that is that they gave space away, and that's one of the most creative places around, because you just give it away and it creates these types of things. So excited for Tassie in this as well. This could be the freelance hub of Australia.
And Australia probably doesn't have that yet. That's on the trail yet. So there are a couple of things before. Again, I do want questions that. There are places. There's a site called Jobatical, which I recently discovered, and I thought that was fascinating. So it's a site that helps people, like the people in this room, find these kind of jobs. So it's not necessarily saying you go and set yourself up and you work from Ubud or Chiang Mai and then you find your own work. It's actually, we need people to come for 3 months to work on this project all across the world. Lots of Asian-based projects, lots of European projects. Talin in Estonia is really huge on this because they've really led this movement, and they're actually taking, you know, the country is labelling itself as a startup country, actually. So there actually now are services that can help match you to those kind of opportunities and have a taste of that life. So I thought Jobatical was quite an interesting iteration. I think you're going to see it being made more and more easy for people like the people in this room to go and either self-support themselves through the kind of place you're building in Bali or through places like Rome, where it's very easy for you to tap into an instant community while you're there, or to be recruited into those kind of jobs. So definitely, if it's something you think, I love my freelance life, but I actually would like to be a bit more mobile, you know, you're right at the right place on the trend. Job and 2 Bs, job article. JOBBATICAL. There's also another quite nice list online called Nomad List, and that's got the kind of the world's best cities for being a digital nomad. And it talks about why, each one, the pros and cons to each place. So that's another interesting one if you're trying to narrow down places. Yes, question here.
My definition of digital nomad was that going to a place to work on specific projects around the world rather than being placed in
Yeah, it's a...
this kind of mobile.
Yeah, and I think both are true now, but I think the bigger trend is the location independence, kind of the next iteration of freelancers realising that because their work is, you know, all their admin is cloud-based, their accounting is cloud-based, their files are up there, they actually haven't seen a client for 5 months in person and they've been generating income. It's kind of the next stage from that. So there's a massive community, lots of 20-somethings doing this, but there's also lots of 30 pluses and 40 pluses and 50 pluses and people who also just want to semi-retire. Really good for that. If you're in as long as you can, no one's worried about where you're working, it's absolutely a trend. Yeah. I mean, I think also the fact that other countries are starting to tap into it. So if Thailand and Estonia can come up with a digital nomad visa and see that there is a market for bringing those people into the country, and obviously those people are going to be sitting there spending money on accommodation, food, internet access, etc., for the 6 months that they're living there. You know, there's a business case to be made at some point that there's dollars attached to this, absolutely.
I think part of it is some attitude at the moment is that with immigration, like I think at the moment we're kind of, it's almost like we're just this nationalist populist kind of approach to things where, you know, it's, I mean, you know, the challenge is it's hard to actually access, like, I know the Atlassian guys really well, you know, and they're trying to get talent in here for their business, and, you know, you're hitting your head against a brick wall. The reality is in some ways we're underpopulated in some areas. So there's this great opportunity to bring these like-minded people through, but visas, part of that's being overdone through international students. So international student mobility is going to increase to almost 1 to 1.2 million international students into the country per year, right? So there's actually talent kind of coming in and floating around in different ways than you actually kind of think that it's happening as well. But I think part of it is that it's going to come from entrepreneurs and businesses to be able to do this, and I think it needs an attitude shift from some corporates as well, that will potentially be driving, you know, the trend towards this.
On a micro level, I did notice when I was looking at job article the other day that some of the jobs have attached that they sort out your visa for you and some don't, and it was really clear. Like, it was, I wasn't going into the jobs, I was looking at the thumbnails and the location and the one-line description, and the next thing it had was, you know, visa arranged or sort out your own visa. So actually, you know, the companies that are using those services and are going to increasingly use those services, in absence of bigger picture solutions, are figuring that out for themselves, or they're trying to do that on behalf of their potential freelancer because you are so valuable to them. So it certainly wasn't, when I was looking, it certainly wasn't, oh, this is only if I can somehow magic up a visa to go and work in Malaysia. Oh no, these 5 countries, if I take this job, it's sorted for me. In a way that I think in the past more on the KPMG, and yes, of course, you can go and work internationally, but you haven't had access to necessarily do that as a freelancer. So I think that's really interesting.
Yes.
So why don't we're all around on the break, come and pick the two big brains over here and come and have a chat to me. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys.